Is communism on the rise in New York? Let's find out in this episode of Letting the Dust Settle. Welcome back to another episode of Letting the Dust Settle. Today we're talking about the infamous New York City mayor candidate, Zohran Mamdani. And he has been all over the news for the past few months, even like for the past maybe a couple of years now. And just how hard he's been pushing. I mean, we have to give credit where credit is due, folks. He's an excellent speaker. He's a young guy, and he's really motivating this socialist left, right? The young left. And that's a really strong in any, major city, right? New York City, San Francisco, that is a really strong voting bloc, right? And especially with colleges like, New York State as well as or NYU as well as Columbia, there's a lot of this really strong blue-pilled individuals that are yearning for democratic socialist policies, which, to be honest, guys, democratic socialism is just some fugazi word for communism. And as we know, communism never works out. And for me, as I've mentioned in some of my episodes before, I'm a revert Muslim, right? And the thing is with Islam and socialism and communism, it's an oxymoron. One of the fundamental principles of communism and socialism is that there cannot be any religion, right, in the philosophy, and that everything is an equal outcome. And that is totally antithetical to the philosophy and the principles of Islam. First of all, it's a monotheistic religion. You have to believe in God. You have to believe in the oneness of God in order to believe in the philosophy of the faith, as well as there is no equal outcome. There's equal opportunity to gain rewards. So we have this guy who's LARPing as a democratic socialist, and he's also LARPing as a Muslim. And so it's like, I'm not saying you have to pick sides, but how can you politically be so fundamentally different than you are religiously speaking? And so it causes concern for me, seriously. And I think it's something to be wary about, where it's like if you are politically and religiously confused, and maybe he's not, he's obviously an intelligent guy, but it seems like he is religiously and politically confused. It's like, what are the intentions here? And now there's been reports where he's been accepting outside money, around $13,000 of foreign donations, one from his mother-in-law from Dubai. They say that he has given back around half of the donations that he was received from the $13,000 of foreign donations, and they're still checking in to see if there's even more foreign aid that he has received. And so it's highly concerning for me. So there are some positive aspects that I have come to learn about him briefly that I do like, and that I think he's very strong. I think he has strong leading principles and mannerisms. However, it's just the left when it comes to democratic socialism, they really push this really fancy schmancy verbiage that sounds really beautiful and nice and comforting, but it's extremely dangerous and toxic.
They pay more than 50% of their income in taxes. When you talk about a fair share, how much more than what is the fair share? What's the number?
I've said that we should increase personal income taxes by 2%.
Is fair.
And my point is this:
give up more than half of your income. That's
if you're making $1 million in New York City, or more than that, you can afford to pay 2% more. And the reasons you can afford to do so is because that money will be used to better your quality of life as well.
Yeah.
Because when I speak to the wealthiest New Yorkers, I hear concerns about the cleanliness of the city, the quality of life in the city, questions of public safety. This money is the money that will be used to deliver on those things so that we can ensure that we have a return on investment for all of the money that we are raising and spending right here across the 5 boroughs.
So a lot of individuals...
The way it works is that everyone has to pay more taxes, but then they're going to have more social housing, more social grocery stores, and like more community grocery stores and community ran grocery stores. But the thing is, if you're taking all of this money, you're going to have to pay people to run this. You're going to have to hire more administrators. You're going to have to hire more workers for this to happen. And things in this country move dangerously slow. It just takes a long time for things to happen. I mean, look at San Francisco or California as a whole when it comes to the train system that's going to go from LA to San Francisco. I mean, it's been almost 15 years, and barely a mile has been finished, right? And so now you're expecting that this, like, even this is a way smaller example, just things move very, very slow. And unfortunately, when it comes to socialism as a whole, very few people get rich, and it tends to be people at the top while the community gets screwed over. Homelessness will run rampant, right? There will be less as well of jobs out there. There's only there might be some more government jobs, but those are low paying and low effort, right? People who work in government do not work fast. They work pretty slow. And that is the main issue with his verbiage, because he sounds so intelligent. However, when it comes to the outcome, I'm highly worried that New York is going to become a crap hole, and like how it did back in the 80s. And so honestly, if I'm being honest here, I hope he gets elected, and I hope communist policies or democratic social policies get enacted, just so we can see how poorly what happens to those cities, like the poor policies that will make the cities even worse, especially in New York City, where there's already a lot of nonsense. The housing is really horrible. Like it's antithetical to American culture, to the American economy, to American values. And that's my big issue with a lot of, like, he thinks he's going to come in, he's going to help, he's going to be the first one to solve democratic socialism, which it's just not possible. It just doesn't happen. Now, the one thing that I have really come to like about him is his strong stance on Palestine. And with now, even first of all, he's been saying that if Bibi Netanyahu comes to New York, he will arrest him, which that won't happen, but I think it's funny, and I think it's very meme-like for him to say, and I think it's awesome. Like, because and even recently he said that he is looking for a lasting peace that will be in the Middle East. Even though that there is a peace deal signed, he just still wants to see a lasting peace. And he's very smart about walking around conversations where the Fox News reporter is saying, hey, will you say that Hamas needs to leave Palestine? And he walks around, he's like, I first of all, I want New York to be a better city, as well as I want peace in the Middle East, and a long-lasting peace.
That Hamas should lay down their weapons and leave the leadership in Gaza.
I believe that any future here in New York City is one that we have to make sure that's affordable for all. And as it pertains to Israel and Palestine, that we have to ensure that there is peace. And that is the future that we have to fight for.
But you won't say that Hamas should lay down their arms and give up leadership in Gaza.
I don't really have opinions about the future of Hamas and Israel beyond the question of justice and safety, and the fact that anything has to abide by international law. And that applies to Hamas, that applies to the Israeli military, applies to anyone you could ask me about.
Okay.
And it's fair, right? It's who knows if this ceasefire deal will actually be, longer than a couple of years, and even if at best, right? But in its entirety, I am concerned for someone who says that they're Muslim, but then it seems like they're pandering, especially when it comes to, there's a video of him standing behind some drag queen at some event, and it's like, I get it, we live in a world where everyone needs to be accepted, but at the end of the day, transgenderism is a form of body dysmorphia, which is a mental illness, and those people should be helped, and we should treat it more seriously like that. And that's also, again, antithetical to the Muslim faith. And it doesn't mean that we have to attack them. Obviously, it doesn't mean we have to treat them poorly. Obviously, we should treat them with kindness and respect, but it doesn't mean we should support it by any means. And so that's why it's like, there are a couple things where I'm like, is this fishy? Is this odd? Because the democratic socialist power grab it ends up always just being a power grab where people at the bottom get screwed. The housing gets screwed, the communities get screwed, the homeless get screwed, the streets get screwed. And that's why it's like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, you know what? And it's just like a lot of people on the right were saying, it's like even though it would be horrible for that to happen, he should get elected just so we all learn a lesson once again. Every few years, we need to learn a lesson about democratic socialism and see how horrible it is for the rest of the people, and it only really helps out the few. And that's politics in general, right? on the right and the left, it comes to the point where few people benefit from the policies that get enacted. But in democratic socialism, it just seems like it's a zero-sum game where everyone gets screwed and things get half built. And even he talks about, like I said, the grocery store example before, like it's probably going to be really crappy groceries. And it's like, do we need, at this point, is that really going to help out the community? A place that's thriving and bustling like New York City, right? I mean, that is the pinnacle. That is the place of capitalism. I'm not saying capitalism is, it has its own dangers too, of course, but it's like, communism, socialism is an experiment that has never worked out ever before. There's no perfect model of economics. However, this model of socialism is the one that's most disastrous. And the fact that we see a Muslim individual and a few Muslim individuals in this country pushing socialism, which is antithetical to the faith, it causes me major concern. And I think he's someone that we should be watching out for, especially if he's accepting foreign aid. So leave a like. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are on Zohran Mamdani. Do you think he should be, do you think he's going to be an all right mayor? Do you like the things that he's saying? Or do you think this is going to be a disaster for New York City?